I didn't know I had so much opened up here. I think this is what I'm looking for. All right, so I just got informed that we're being streamed. Lauren, we just decided to stream these meetings on YouTube like a regular board meeting in case we had more than 3 trustees, to try to kind of keep stuff as above board as possible given the circumstances. So Lauren, what I'm going to do is you might remember from our meeting here at the museum, I showed you some of our pre-planning drawings, and we had a building design that was essentially 2 perpendicular wings, one on top of the other. And so as that concluded our pre-plan, the idea of doing a pre-plan is to give an idea of the scope or size of your project and the cost. So we're redoing the cost now for obvious reasons, right? But the scope still remains, so that was a good study from that standpoint. So we're talking a roughly 28,000 square foot building. However, the perpendicular designs do not work well, particularly with the regulations of the state of Virginia, right? So we've decided to abandon that and kind of take things in a different direction. But with that said, I wanted to walk you through how we got to where we're going. And we have a final kind of conceptual design meeting that's going to allow us to get our next cost estimate Monday, right? So how do we get to where we're at now and what we're going to kind of finalize on Monday? But what you see here is a variety of color blocks. In fact, let me bring this up. Here we go. Let's start here, right? So what you have here is a flow chart, purple being exhibits, greenish yellow being kind of public areas that are services to the public. The blue areas are classrooms and lab spaces, and then the remainder, the green, the dark blue, and some of these others represent the back of house, right? So you see the majority of our building is dedicated to public experiences, to education programs, and to our science. So what they then do is they draw arrows and whatnot, and they try to figure out, okay, what's the best connections between these different areas? And then they create what they call these stacking diagrams. So here on the first floor, this would be the ground floor at the bottom. You see those same colors corresponding with exhibits, classrooms, services, and so forth. And we have a second floor that further have those areas defined as well. The red areas represent elevators, stairwells, and the like. And then what we have lastly up here on top, this is essentially, just think of it as a rooftop containment area for mechanicals, right? So that's kind of the direction that we're going here. And incidentally, the material that you see today, we've given some input into. So on Monday, we're going to be looking at updates to this, and then perhaps further modify it and or approve the direction that we're going in. So what are we stuck with our decision making at this point? It is indeed, we're saying we have a 2-story building that's going to have exhibit areas split between floors, a general layout of the entranceway, lobby, store, box office, and that sort of thing, and then relative positions, even though a lot of this during the next phase starting in January can still be moved around. They gave us a few different options. So this is option B. It's very similar to A. They just kind of moved a few things around. And C, and so what we'll look at on Monday is going to be an amalgamation of the 3 stacking diagrams plus further comment from the committees. And this kind of shows what it might kind of look like on the lot, right? So this doesn't show our property line, but our property line is right about here. As long as you can see my cursor, let me bring up an arrow. That's the same thing. How about the hand? Yeah, the hand's a little more noticeable. All right, so this is one area of the property line, and it goes diagonally to about here, right? And the rest of this is South River Preserve. This represents the greenway, which we can easily connect to, and so forth. So the parking that's just placeholder. So what they have there is not necessarily realistic to what we need. So this is the stacking diagram or the site diagrams A, B, and C. And then we move on to kind of putting it more into sort of a real life position here where you can begin to see how it might lay out. So again, we have these 3 different options. But what they then do to begin to try and decide on some kind of overall building design, or an aesthetic, I guess I should say, is that they'll then kind of put a skin on that stacking diagram. So this was all very fascinating to me to watch progress. So here you can see sort of a general design of what a building could look like. We're fortunate to have the assistance of James Madison University as our construction managers. They're quick to jump on things, to be like, nah, the state's not going to fund that. You know, better be careful, or better have a plan B, because the state might not fund this, right? So they're drawing upon their experience to at least prepare the architects for any kind of review from the state, and to have options ready. And yet one more view while we're at here. So when you go and visit Main Street, when you go and visit Waynesboro, you got Main Street. And Lauren, I'm sorry, have you been into the city before? I know you haven't had the full tour with us.
I have been to Waynesboro, but it's been several years. So,
all right, well, I'm sure it looks a lot different now, thanks to Greg and his colleagues. But this area right here is sort of the bottom of Main Street, because there's a hill that goes up towards the Wayne Theater and the City Hall and so forth, right? So this is Main Street and this is Broad Street. So when we talk about the corner of Arch and Main, this is Arch. So that's sort of our main landmark that we talk about when we try to orient people to where we're building, right? So the building main entrance is underneath this area right here. They're proposing sort of a publicly accessible second floor access. We don't know how that works yet, you know, as far as like paying customers versus people just kind of wandering around the park or something like that, but that we can deal with later. The main entrance itself would be marked, so what you won't see at this early stage is signage and so forth. But right now, the front door aims towards the South River Preserve and the South River. We just today we haven't shared it widely, so Greg, I don't know that you've seen this yet. We have a computerized model of what the view from the second floor would look like, looking out into the South River Preserve, straight on in this direction, or even, as Tom Benzing likes to point out, what he calls the best view of the South River view shed, which would be a little bit to our left or to our south here, right? So he's provided those, which was very interesting. So a few views of this kind of schematic, just to kind of orient you. If we then move on to the next one, which of course I'm jumping ahead here. If we move to this next one, this is the next bit of work that they did. And if you focus on this particular diagram here, this one right here, it basically is showing the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is a very classic shot, showing the green in the front and the blue in the back. Remember the idea of the logos, right? You know, so and what he did was our architect Werner Johnson developed this. So this has the same general characteristics of that kind of schematic view. So this is that second floor kind of walkable terrace, the front entrance leading into the South River Preserve. This arc up here is the rooftop mechanicals and so forth. And I'll kind of give you one more view of this. And so the idea here, in fact, so in this particular view, what you see here is that he utilized on this side of the building, the Arch Avenue side, he is representing here schematically the idea of the use of traditional masonry. The reason is this is the city side of the building. So you kind of blend the city and the museum together is the goal here. On this side, you get more of an access to these accented blue and green areas that were inspired by the Blue Ridge mountain photography. So if we back up to this slide, and I'll zoom back in, he has in the past used these stainless steel panels as a way to accentuate a building. And as you see, it kind of, depending upon the angle of the panel, it kind of gives you a sort of a different shade. And he says it creates this very nice dynamic building look. So this was something that we found attractive and satisfactory. So he's going to continue to provide us with information on that. So that's kind of given us our general aesthetic of the building. Now, at this point, there is a lot of discussion, right? You know, so one, we like the idea that this is publicly accessible because we're now starting to use this phrase that we want to make the building available 24/7, maybe not the inside, but at least the property with maybe engaging activities on the outside, that might relate to kind of a natural quote unquote playground or photo op area, a place where you get your prom pictures, your wedding pictures, or something like that. On the back side of the building, which I'll show you, that we might have picnic tables and maybe even a small shelter available so people can go and have their picnic lunch there. Plus, of course, even during non-business hours, the parking would be available to support uptown activities in general. So we talked about that. We also talked about, what we don't have yet, be jumping the gun. We don't really talk about green roof yet, but in our stacking diagrams, one of the scenarios does have stair elevator access to here. So we can support green roof concepts here. I'll also point out over here, and we'll get back to that as well. This area over here we can either do it in phase 1 if we have the money for it, or we make it phase 2. This flat roof here can be a very nice entertainment space. So during the regular hours, it could be a place where people go out and decompress, enjoy the view of the watershed, whatever the case may be, or we have rental and event opportunities out there as well. So this shows, this is Main Street down here, Arch Avenue behind the building. So it's like you're standing over Broad Street here. So this is that same terrace I was telling you about, potential green roof area. We just need to make sure that we have the elevator and stairs coming up in the right place. This shows very nicely how we would hide the rooftop mechanicals. The area of the second floor terrace would be shaded. I'm not sure I'm sold on this particular kind of, whatever you want to call that, overhang to provide shade, but a lot to talk about before then, and the front entrance of the museum. So here's kind of a ground level view from the Broad Street Bridge, and very importantly from the Main Street Bridge, because one of the things we want to do is we want to attract to our services people off the Blue Ridge Parkway and Skyline Drive. So this drive down Route 250 down the mountain into Waynesboro, once you start to approach the South River, this becomes your first view of downtown. So something that's very attractive and dynamic, and I hope screams museum, right? Especially when we start to put logos or outdoor features and signage and so forth on it, it'll scream public space. This is the back area. So this is Arch Avenue right here in Main Street. They specifically were talking about leaving a space like this blank, so that way we could have infrastructure to hang banners to talk about what's inside the building, temporary exhibits or whatever. This is the back area that I thought would be good for picnic tables and so forth, at least to start. They did offset the building from Arch Avenue. One, they have to, but it's offset as much as it is because this could be an area that is developed specifically for a expansion, if we're wildly successful 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, whatever the case may be, to increase the public experience. And just one more of many views of the new building. All right, so again, it's not in this particular diagram, but he did show, DGS told us that we have to have 89 spaces available. Greg, I went and counted them yesterday. There's something like 180 or close to 200, something like that. I should have wrote it down in that spot. So if we put 89 back, we're getting to cutting down half the parking. So this is something we want to continue to have a dialogue about.
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay. So the parking lot or the parking diagram that shows 89 spaces is not this, but needless to say, we are taking into account bus and passenger drop off and so forth, an area for access to a loading dock in the back, plus perhaps like staff parking or something. There's already designated handicap parking in the new design and so forth. But all this, of course, will evolve as our design evolves. And just a couple of other bits here. So incidentally, we do have a new floodplain. This is brand new. It's pretty close to what we had before, but it's slightly updated. So basically, this corner here of the lot is up out of the 100-year floodplain. And so Timmons has already calculated that if this is the high point of the lot right here, so if we put this corner of the building on this corner of the lot, that they've already calculated the number of feet that these edges have to be lifted up to match this level. So we're going to be waiting and see, and this won't be until 2023, how the grading of the lot ends up looking, so I'm sure there's going to be some creative thinking and experience that's brought into that. I'm not even going to try to predict what that looks like, but we have some further updates on the floodplain coming. Greg, I will just say that you weren't in on that meeting, were you? You were not.
Which meeting?
Okay, we had a floodplain meeting.
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm glad you didn't, there wasn't a lot new that came out of it. They basically asked some questions. So we fed them the best information that we had. Yeah, that is what it is. But basically they said everything's fine. The other thing that came out of this was that if we built here and built that up to raise the building, that their analysis is such as that we won't be flooding our neighbors. Like, for instance, your office doesn't get full of water every time it rains just because we raised the building. So
That'd
don't
be
worry.
good. I'd be moving into your office. So
Yeah. Well, that's what they did here at New College Institute. They moved the Office of Economic Development right into the Higher Ed Center.
Yep.
So we should have been thinking about that.
Yeah.
All right. So that's what I have. I don't think there's anything new in these. No, this is all the same stuff. Okay, yeah, so that's what I have as far as kind of an update. So we're gonna modify the plans that you see slightly on Monday, and provide input from these Zoom calls as well as from the in-person meetings and the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee input as well. So yeah, so we'll have more to share definitely at the board meeting.
That's great.
So Greg, did I miss anything from your perspective?
No, that's very nice. I haven't seen some of this stuff, so lots of progress. Looks really cool.
Yeah, it is. And I'll just say, as a museum guy, and I've worked in a few museums and I've toured 100, I don't know. Everything from this to oh, wait a minute, I do have one I didn't show you. Here it is. This here shows kind of a better concept of the inside. So this is the first or ground floor. This here is the second or upper floor. And so we're talking about modifying the classrooms. We're talking about where to put the early childhood area. There's another one. Oh, the lab space is over here. We're talking about maybe trading out some exhibit space over here and flip-flopping those around. So those are things that Brad and his team are addressing on Monday. And just to put things into perspective for you, this area here is bigger than 2 halls of ancient life. So this is pretty sizable. All right. And so we have another exhibit area here as well. There's a lot we can do with this. And then the area up here, this is a little smaller than the Hall of Ancient Life. This is about the size of our current temporary exhibit or traveling exhibit area. And if we did swap the lab and some exhibit space around, put the lab over here, that would be still a good size gallery down here on the end. So this might be about half to 2/3 the size of the Hall of Ancient Life. This would be a good size gallery approaching our temporary gallery, and this would be about equivalent to our temporary gallery. So I think this provides a lot of exploratory options for people, a lot of concepts for content. And Lauren, I'll also provide, are you going to make it to our next board meeting in person?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are, as part of that board meeting, we're going to do a quick tour of our old building. We finished the roof over there, and the relevance of that trip to this project is that when we go to our old building, the old building is only a couple thousand square feet larger than the proposed VMNH-Waynesboro facility. So that'll give you an idea of the size of the building we'll be working with, and therefore the size of the public experience.
Cool.
So yeah, so getting back to your point, how Greg, you said, good progress and everything, and I believe that's true. Just as someone who's, has been through a lot of museums, the layout on the inside, the kind of thematic use of the environment in the city on the outside, I think that's going really well, and I think it's going to be an attractive building. And I think it's also a lesson learned because Brad and his team did tour Martinsville and tour this facility here in Martinsville. And they recognize that we have a building that sticks out like a sore thumb. You know, it doesn't match anything, right? And so they were very cognizant of that when they came up with this design. Jonathan, you got anything I'm missing that you want to add?
No, I think you're doing great. We talked about in some of the other meetings, we talked about lighting at night and how, you know, we're still looking to not LEED certified, but the BESS, so the Virginia Energy Standards, and everything is still headed in that direction. Landscape will be a big part of that. And then, you know, phase 1 or phase 2, green roof, that kind of thing. But the designs take into account the green space around it and the need to move in that direction per the code.
Yeah, we've only begun to kind of chew at the edges regarding things like permeable pavers or other kind of stormwater or energy savings options, you know. So that's going to become more into focus in the work in 2023.
So could you go back to the, like one of the very first ones, the total aerial shot?
There's that, and then
one showing the more of the city. Maybe even go back to the flow diagram. You know, the first things you showed us. There you go. There we go. So
I think there's one with the or maybe not.
No, I want to see the relationship of the parking to the city. So that one would work.
Okay.
So have they talked to our building folks yet? Because typically, and I know you talked about the parking's only there a placeholder, but typically they do not like streets that don't go, that are offset like that showing. So at the top of the screen where the parking lot dumps on, yeah, right there. So that doesn't, I would think if they would have a preference, they would like to see that moved over 50 feet or whatever. Yeah. So I just think that before that gets too far along, they might want to just double check that.
All right, give me a second, make a note here.
And maybe that's fine because this is a parking lot and that's a one-way street coming out behind my office.
Right.
So maybe it doesn't matter, but any other time we try to do a development and have offsetting streets like that, they said, no, let's try to make it a straight shot.
I see exactly what you're talking about. That makes sense to me. Like down here.
Like that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes good sense. All right, I'm down with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
But no, it's fabulous. Looks nice.
All right. I'm pretty sure we've invited Laura Martin to this. She hasn't attended one of these, but
Okay.
Maybe that's a question that we'll pose directly to her and send her a few shots, or maybe she can just print them out and mark them up, you know,
Yeah.
send them to us or something. But yeah, that's great. We want to know about that sooner rather than later.
Right.
All right.
Looks good.
Okay. Lauren, anything else we can do for you?
The only question I have, and maybe this is, I'm jumping the gun, or I missed this somewhere along the way. Do we know if, like, how many staff people this comes with? Like, do we have like a budget already that's set that says, okay, this is how many staff people that are going to come with this new facility, or we don't know that yet?
Yeah, I'm going to actually send you our business model.
Oh,
And you
cool.
you can
Okay.
page through that. So that does have kind of broadly line by line budget item. And I will also send you, Ryan did a nice brief, like quick white paper on Danville Science Center. Danville Science Center was one of our models for us because it is a branch of the Science Museum of Virginia in Richmond.
Yeah.
And it's actually a little bigger than this because they actually also own an operating train station. So that's a little different scenario,
Yeah.
you know. But the staff size and so forth and the staff composition is modeled after their program.
Okay.
So and incidentally too, I don't know if I'd ever mentioned this, but it was Children's Museum of Richmond that kind of got me to thinking about a branch, and that hooked me up with Center for Cold Waters Restoration in the city of Waynesboro, you know, because they've successfully they have their central facility in Richmond, but opened one in Short Pump and then another one in Chesterfield.
Okay.
So, so those are the two main museums that we've been studying in terms of trying to come up with an operational look at this.
Yeah, I would hate for us to put in all this work and then somewhere along the way, people are like, yeah, you can have 2 staff. And,
Yeah.
obviously that's not enough. So,
Yeah.
I want to make
Well,
sure.
it's not going to be a lot. It's
Yeah.
what we have identified are services that can be provided by VMNH main campus virtually, such
Yeah,
as
yeah.
HR, payroll, purchasing, marketing, all of these things can be done, with our existing staff. And then it's just going to be different, just like it's been for me for as long as I've been here in Martinsville, that our staff are going to have to get used to periodic support drives up there and vice versa. When we're running a big festival on a Saturday, they'll have to be used to driving down to Martinsville and
Yeah.
supporting our festival. So, it's all going to be one staff.
That's great.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I appreciate the both of you taking a chunk of your lunch hour out for this and whatnot. Greg, are you going to be at the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee meeting?
I will be late at best.
That's right. Okay.
Yep.
Well, if you miss any or all of it, we'll make sure to give you a heads up. I am staying overnight because I have a function to attend at Frontier Culture, and I can't find my because I'm sharing screen. Hang on. I am staying overnight. I'll send you a quick email.
Okay.
So if there's anything that we can do on Wednesday, we can knock it out.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Thank you.